All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the show. Another day here in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. If you are not already subscribed and watching this on YouTube, please be sure to do that. If you're listening as a podcast, leave a review, do all that fun stuff. The biggest thing right now, in terms of Steelers related things, I mean, you're watching the video, you know why you're here, is that it looks like Pittsburgh is leaning toward bringing back Russell Wilson, which is, coming into this week, not something I would have had on my bingo card. I would have said, yeah, it's more than likely. It just makes sense to bring back Justin Fields if it's down to one of those two. But in terms of just things I'm hearing, it sounds like Art Rooney prefers Russell Wilson. And it also looks like a possibility that money-wise, they might not come to an agreement and meet Justin Fields where he wants to be met financially. And if that's the case, and we've heard Omar Khan on multiple occasions say, yeah, we'd prefer to bring back a guy that was in-house last year, whether that be Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And if it's the case where they can't come to terms with Fields on the money, and maybe even the length of the contract, depending on what he wants, that leaves them with Russell Wilson as somebody who they could start talks with again, which, again, sounds like they certainly have done more than that. I'm told that there is an offer that they put in front of Russ. It's just a matter of if he takes it or not. So we'll see what comes of that. I know a lot of people have conflicting reports and whatnot, and I'm not going to dispute what other people are hearing. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. So, I see here Robert is in the chat saying, not according to Kaboli, huge mistake if they bring back Russ. I'm not disputing anything that Kaboli's hearing. I'm just telling you guys what I heard. And I agree. This isn't me saying that I want Russell Wilson to return, by the way. I've said since the end of the playoff loss to Baltimore, I think that would be just a huge waving of a white flag if they do bring back Russ. But in a situation like this, where if they can't come to an agreement with Justin Fields, and they've made it pretty clear that they would rather keep one of the guys in-house that they already had, then they're going to turn to Russell Wilson, and he's going to be their second option in that situation. So, again, I'm not disputing what, Kabali might be saying or what Aditi might be saying. I am only telling you what I'm hearing. And this isn't to say that it's certain that Russell Wilson's returning. But from what I've been told, they have put at least an offer in front of him. It's just a matter of if he takes it. Now, again, could Justin Fields end up being the one who returns? Absolutely. And I think Pittsburgh, that's what they would prefer. At least that's what I think the majority of the coaches would prefer, specifically Arthur Smith. I think a good amount of the players would prefer it. But from the sounds of it, ownership, and by ownership, Art Rooney, prefers Russell Wilson, which isn't necessarily a surprise, at least not to me, and I'm sure it's not going to be a surprise to many because Art Rooney has not done a good job of running this thing. And no one's going to be surprised if Russell Wilson is the one that Art Rooney wants. There's not going to be anybody who in the fan base that's going to be like, oh, yeah, that's, complete shocker. Because Art Rooney is the most conservative owner in football. In terms of he's not going to spend huge money if he doesn't feel like he has to. And fair or not, the talks of, we really want to end this playoff drought, that's all going to be looked at as lip service if you don't make the moves necessary to get over that hump. You're in the AFC. In your own division, you got to deal with Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and in the rest of the conference, you got to deal with Mahomes, Allen. You got to deal with, the great quarterbacks of this league, C.J. Stroud. You're not going to get through that gauntlet with Russell Wilson. And I know some people who are, might be not on the Justin Fields train, I guess, in terms of him being the best option, would say, well, you might not do it with Justin Fields either. And while I agree with that, you can at least find out. Because with Russell Wilson, we know what that looks like. We just saw it. Okay. He's going to have some peaks, but that thing is going to come down hard. And then it's going to leave you losing your last 5 games and getting humiliated in the wild card round. When it comes to Fields, if you give him, this is a guy who's 25, 26 years old, if you give him an entire offseason knowing that he's going to be the starter, build around him and give him more of an opportunity to, have an entire season as a starter, then at least you can figure out if he's the future or not. Russell Wilson's not the future. And again, certainly not impossible that Justin Fields returns. But when it comes to what Art Rooney wants, it certainly sounds like he wants Russell Wilson. Now, depending on what Mike Tomlin wants, now I'm not going to pretend to know that, nor will I pretend to know what Arthur Smith wants. But if I'm a betting man, I'd bet he wants Justin Fields, especially just from things that I've heard while down here. And, when it comes to at the end of the season, all the rumors of him and Russell Wilson not getting along, all the dots connect to a lot more people in the building wanting Justin Fields, but the man at the top wanting Russell Wilson. And again, if it's a money thing, I can't imagine it's like a huge discrepancy of what you would pay Russ compared to what you would pay Fields. So I feel like it's just a matter of Art Rooney kind of having the final say in this type of thing and wanting it to be Russell Wilson for another year. And again, it's not to take so much away from Russ because the peaks were, they were there. We saw it in the Giants game, the Jets game, the Bengals game, Washington. Like we saw really good football being played for a solid month stretch where they won 5 in a row. They looked like one of the best teams in the NFL. Defense was playing well. The offense looked explosive. Like Mike Tomlin, for a time looked really smart for making the switch. But when that thing crashed, it crashed hard. And a lot of that had to do with the passing game just taking a nosedive, the offense not being able to do anything against the upper tier teams of the NFL. And some people will look at it in the light of, well, they played, Kansas City, they played Baltimore, Philadelphia. Those are all 3 really good teams, which is true. But if you can't even compete with the really good teams in the NFL, then that should be a signal going off right away that, okay, we got to do something different. And if you run it back with Russell Wilson after what we saw him do twice against Baltimore, really 3 times against Baltimore, because even the game that they won, he didn't play well. So what you saw him do 3 times against Baltimore, against Kansas City, against Philadelphia, if you run that back, man, you are just waving a white flag, and nothing that you say will be taken as truth or be taken seriously because of your actions. And a lot of people are already saying, look, man, like if they bring back Russell Wilson, it's going to be very hard to get invested in 2025. And that's fair. Because we just saw what that would look like. 9-10 wins, backing into the playoffs if they get in at all. And if they do get in, getting beat to hell by an actual team with an actual quarterback and an actual head coach where the game hasn't passed him by. So, again, I believe that the majority of people in the building want Justin Fields, but I believe the one cutting the checks wants Russell Wilson. And again, I'm told that they've at least put a deal in front of Russ, and it's just a matter of if he decides to take it or not and if they can come to terms with Fields on anything. And if they can, then I think Justin is the one that they would prefer to bring back. As, when it comes to Omar Khan, maybe even Mike Tomlin, almost certainly Arthur Smith. And I would say almost certainly a lot of the guys in the locker room. Because you can talk guys into, okay, we got a 26-year-old quarterback who's incredibly dynamic, dual threat, rocket arm, needs finely tuned when it comes to the underneath and intermediate stuff and finding it quicker, but a ton of potential. And he played well in the 6 games that he started last year. It's a lot harder to talk a team into, all right, we're going to run it back with the almost 40-year-old who took a dive off a cliff in the last month and a half of the season last year, and we're going to do that again. I mean, at least personally speaking, if I was in the locker room and that was the rally cry, you'd have a hard time getting me motivated to go out there and put my body on the line every week, knowing that the ceiling for the team and the season as a whole is incredibly low. So, and again, not disputing what anybody else is hearing or reporting. Definitely not doing that. I am just telling you what I've heard. So we will see what comes of that. We got. Can you corroborate that Russ's contract asks are actually more than Fields and they're still moving towards him anyway? I have no idea what either Russ or Fields are asking for contractually or monetarily. So I'm not going to pretend to be, have ears inside of Omar Khan's office or anything like that. So I don't know what the money is that Russ is asking for. I don't know what the money is that Fields is asking for. I'm merely speculating that Fields might be asking for more than what they're willing to pay. But I have been told at least that they have an offer for Russ, and it's just a matter of if he takes it or not. If they would rather have Fields, why are they taking Wilson back? Again, it might just come down to money. If you're Fields and you feel like if you're looking at the Sam Darnold deal from last year and you're Justin Fields, you can say, look, I deserve more than what Sam Darnold got, which was 1 year, $10 million. And if the Steelers are saying, we're going to give you the Sam Darnold deal, but the Jets would be like, we'll give you more than that, which, by the way, Jeremy Fowler reported that there's mutual interest between the Jets and Justin Fields. Then if you're Justin Fields and you're looking at, okay, they got Aaron Glenn as a new head coach. He seems like he could be the right guy for the job. They got my guy Garrett Wilson over there, who I played with in college, a really good defense. It's certainly alluring in a lot of ways where you look at the pieces that they have and you say, yeah, I could see myself going there. And by the way, he would be the unquestioned starter there. In Pittsburgh, you don't know what they're going to do. Because even if they bring back Fields, I feel like he would want to come back, and he, that's been reported by Fowler too. He wants to come back knowing that he's going to be the starter. And if the Steelers aren't willing to do that for him either, then why would he come back if he can go to the Jets with arguably better weapons in place, better pieces in place defensively? If I'm Justin Fields, that's something I'm strongly considering. I'm not just going to stay in Pittsburgh because I was just there. I would look at all my options. And if the Jets are a real option, then yeah. But I do believe that the Steelers would rather have Fields. It's just a matter of the money that they would want to give him. And if he can get more elsewhere, which he probably can with the Jets, then that's something that he's going to consider. Now, it's not all, complete bad news when it comes to the quarterback stuff. And I'm going to do a separate one later on as it pertains to what else has been told. You know what? I might as well just do it now, actually. It'll be 2 birds with 1 stone, and I'll just break it up into a separate video. So, on top of the Russell Wilson stuff, it's been told, well, it was reported by multiple people, I think on the Denver side of things, that Courtland Sutton could be moved. And dating back to last year, the Steelers were one of at least 2 teams that reached out to the Broncos about acquiring Courtland Sutton. They did it before and during the draft, called the Broncos about Courtland Sutton. They were told no both times. The Rams were the other team who were interested. Both teams were told, no, we're not trading Courtland Sutton. And he had a really good year, obviously. Had career high in catches, had 8 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards. He had a very good year in Denver. But they still aren't planning on paying him. He's going into the last year of his deal. And if you're Denver, I mean, you're not going to ever get more for Courtland Sutton than what you could this offseason. And if they're not going to keep him long-term anyway, they may as well trade him for something. And so, I was told, hey, look out for potentially Courtland Sutton going Pittsburgh's way, especially if they bring back Russ, because Russell Wilson and Courtland Sutton had a really good connection in Denver. They're still friends. Courtland Sutton had a career-high 10 touchdown receptions with Russ in Denver in 2023. So there's certainly something to that, I would say, especially if Russell Wilson is the one that they do decide to bring back. Just because, like I said, the pre-existing chemistry with those two, they're still good friends. And dating back to last year when the original conversations were happening with the Steelers and Broncos, or, with Pittsburgh reaching out to Denver, I don't know the extent of the conversations that were had, but I was told by a source close to Sutton that he would love to play with Russell Wilson again. So there are certainly a world where the Steelers bring back Russell Wilson and then trade for Courtland Sutton, which I understand that there would be frustrations with bringing back Russell Wilson. I would certainly share those frustrations, but I could also be talked into a world where Russell Wilson is throwing to George Pickens and Courtland Sutton as his top two receivers. And in an offense with an offensive coordinator like Arthur Smith, the 2019 Titans, what did they do really well? They ran the ball, did a lot of play action, deep balls, and there's few receivers in the NFL that are better than catching those deep balls than both George Pickens and Courtland Sutton. So while I would share the frustrations of fans if they did decide to bring back Russell Wilson, if Courtland Sutton came with him to some extent, that's something I could get on board with. Even if my excitement would have a little bit of a low ceiling because of the quarterback that they have. And if you can get Courtland Sutton, you can probably get him at this point for an early day 3. I mean, we saw last year the wide receiver market was a little bit weird when it came to trades. Deontay Johnson was traded for a day 3 and a player. Jerry Jeudy was traded for, I think, a pair of day 3 picks. I think it was 2 6s for Jerry Jeudy, who, by the way, ended up having a great year in Cleveland. So it depends on what the market would be like, because in season it got a little bit weird. The Bills traded a 3rd round pick for Amari Cooper, which felt like a slight overpay, but something that made sense for them to do at the time. So again, it just depends on what the market would be like for a receiver. But I'm told, hey, keep an eye on Courtland Sutton potentially going to Pittsburgh, which again makes perfect sense because last year the Steelers had those conversations. They reached out to Denver, hey, we want Courtland Sutton. The Broncos told them no both times that they reached out, but it's very clear that the Steelers have interest in Sutton to begin with. And so a guy going into the last year of his deal who's not going to be brought back by Denver. If the Broncos were going to bring him back, they would have signed him to an extension last offseason. They didn't. So if you're Pittsburgh, you see that and you say, yeah, we'll try to make a move for Courtland Sutton. And then if you want to give him, a year or 2 extension to spread that money out, granted, it's not a huge cap hit. I think he's scheduled to make like $13 million next year. So regardless, though, if they can get Courtland Sutton, which I believe that they can, because they got a lot of day 3 picks. If you can get them for an early day 3 pick, then maybe that's something that they do. Joey says, we have a lot of cap. I hope the Steelers target a cornerback in free agency and focus on defensive line in the draft. Yeah, I mean, the cornerback class in free agency is very good. You have the guys at the top of it, Carlton Davis, DJ Reed, Travarius Ward, Nate Hobbs coming out of Vegas. I'm trying to think of any others that are maybe escaping my mind. But it's both, the big names at the top, but it's also very deep in terms of, the middle of the pack guys that you could bring in. I think nickel cornerback is as big a need for the Steelers as any position right now. So if they can go out and get one of those as well, that would be superb. In terms of, let me bring up that comment again. D-line in the draft, I mean, this is the draft to do it. It's a very defensive line heavy class. But I would also say that if they can add another receiver, even if they do trade for Sutton, I wouldn't be against them drafting like Matthew Golden if he's available, especially if you don't plan on extending Pickens. You may as well have a guy in-house already. And from what we saw last year with the receivers, you can't run back anything like that again. I love Ben Skoranek. He can't be your 3rd option. So if they can do something where it's Pickens and Sutton with Golden and Austin as your top 4, Roman Wilson as your 5th, I don't know how good Roman Wilson's going to be. When I was in the building last year for OTAs and minicamp, he didn't do anything to impress me. even when he was healthy. So we'll see when it comes to that stuff. But I would agree that if D-line is the first pick for them, I'm not going to be, shaking my fist. If they can get someone like a Mason Graham, if they can get, a Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan, those are going to be the bigger names that are circled when it comes to Pittsburgh. But we'll see the order in which they decide to address these needs. And again, free agency will dictate a lot of that. If they have a big free agency and get, a top tier corner, that kind of takes away the need for an outside corner in terms of, using a high end draft pick on it. If they make a big splash signing a defensive line, then you don't really have to worry about drafting one in the first round. So it just depends on what they do in free agency at that point, I believe. But this is the class to take care of it if they decide to draft one, which I think they probably will, and they would go about addressing the other needs in free agency. And so if they sign, like back to the receivers, if they sign like Darius Slayton and pull off the Courtland Sutton trade, that's great. You almost kill two birds with one stone, because you're signing Darius Slayton, you'd give up maybe a day 3 for Courtland Sutton. Nobody that you take on day 3 is going to be better than Courtland Sutton, almost certainly right away. So there's a lot of different things that they can do, a lot of different combinations of ways that they can go about it. But hopefully they take care of all those things. We're not left scratching our heads wondering why they didn't add a receiver again, which I don't think we're going to. I think that they saw the results of that last year and they don't want that to happen again. But they also saw the results of Russell Wilson last year and seem more than willing to do that again. At least Art Rooney is. Like I said at the start of the show, I believe that the majority of people in the building want Justin Fields back. I believe that the person cutting the checks wants Russell Wilson. And, Steelers fans have been really upset with Art Rooney. Rightfully so. He hasn't exactly done a great job. They haven't won a playoff game in 8 years. It's the longest drought in franchise history, dating back to 1930. So, yeah, fans are angry. They have a right to be angry. And if a lot of them are like, you know what, I'm just going to take a break this year, it'd be understandable. There's going to be a lot of people in the comment section of this, Steelers fans are so spoiled. To hell with that. You can't talk about the Steelers being so great and Mike Tomlin being so great when, in the span of his last playoff win until now, Dan Quinn took the Falcons to the Super Bowl, got fired, spent 3 years as the Cowboys defensive coordinator, got hired by Washington, and then took the Commanders to the NFC Championship. He did all that between Mike Tomlin's last playoff win and now. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth with that. You can't do it. Fans have a right to be annoyed and frustrated. And if they bring back Russell Wilson, like I said multiple times throughout the show, it's a proverbial wave of the white flag. Just saying, yeah, we're just kind of mailing it in this year and hoping that we can get, Drew Aller or somebody in 2025 or 2026. So we'll see. Again, I hope that this isn't what comes to fruition. I'm only saying what I've heard, not what I want to happen, because I would much prefer they bring back Fields. But, like I said, at least what I've been told, it looks like they at least have an offer for Russ. And if he decides to take it, then it's certainly likely that he'll be back. And if they can come to terms with Fields, that is who I believe is their preferred option. But if they can't come to terms on money, and if Justin sees the New York Jets, who apparently have interest, with his buddy Garrett Wilson, who he played with in college, a good run game, or at least a good set of running backs, a good defense. Aaron Glenn seems like a solid head coach. Obviously that was going to be time to figure that out. And we, a lot of people said similar things about Robert Saleh, but, each case is different. So we'll find out soon enough if Aaron Glenn's the right guy. But it's no guarantee that Justin Fields will be back. And it's also no guarantee that Russell Wilson will be back. Again, this is just very much a, hey, here's what I'm hearing through the grapevine situation. And by no means am I reporting that the deal is done. just what I am hearing on behind the scenes. So, like I said at the start of the show, if you're not already subscribed, be sure to do that. If you're listening as a podcast, leave a review, do all that fun stuff. Wrapping up my week here in Indy at the NFL Combine. And again, I did one immediately after Omar Khan's press conference, so that's on the channel already. If you missed it, go ahead and watch that. If you want to know my takeaways from Omar Khan's press conference. And again, appreciate everybody for watching. In terms of what I want to happen, it's certainly not the title of this video. I don't think that bringing back Russell Wilson makes any sense whatsoever, just because we saw what that looks like at the end of last year. I think that going with Fields makes a lot more sense. Even if there is some unknown with that, it's better than going to the known of your ceiling being an early playoff elimination and then making it 9 years without a playoff win. So we'll see if that does happen. If anybody has any more questions or comments, be sure to leave them in the next minute or so before we wrap up, and I'll get to them. But we'll see what happens. We've got about 2 weeks until the new league year starts, and then we're going to find out very quickly what it is the Steelers do. My guess is it would be, it's not going to be at the midnight hour like it was last year. I don't think that we're going to get a tweet from Russell Wilson saying, all right, we're running it back at midnight. Although if we do, I think that half of Pittsburgh would burn down because the Steelers fans are going to be pissed. But we'll find out probably day one of free agency who it's going to be. Rekka says, Jarrett, contrary to others, I believe you. Oh, again, let me make it very clear. I'm not disputing what anybody else is hearing. Again, these are just very much, hey, here's what I'm hearing, not, hey, here's what's going to happen. This is the biggest rumor mill of the NFL calendar. That's what the NFL Combine is. More than just talking to prospects, it's, hey, what are you hearing about this? So, there's going to be some conflicting reports from not just the Steelers, but all over the league. And so I'm not disputing anything that Kabali's saying or Adidi's saying. I'm sure that they did hear those things. I'm merely saying what I heard. So when it comes to that, we'll see what does come to fruition in terms of what Kabali and Adidi are hearing. I hope they're right. And I hope what they're hearing ends up coming true rather than what I heard. So we'll see. But we'll find out in a couple weeks. Tomlin seems to be infatuated with Russ. Even when he was playing bad, he never thought about putting Justin Fields on the field. So it makes sense. Yeah, that's another thing too, where, in the Philadelphia game, I can kind of understand it because you didn't have Pickens in that game. But against Kansas City, it's the fourth quarter, you're down by a lot. Why not just at least put him in and see if it's worth doing in the future? In the Baltimore game, coming out of halftime, I understand that Russell Wilson, threw a big touchdown pass to Van Jefferson, but what was the thought process behind? All right, yeah, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. You're not going to at least see what you got in Fields. You saw it in the first 6 weeks. You put him on the field in Cleveland, and he led a huge drive down the field, which got the Steelers back into the game. So, I don't know. You guys know my feelings about Mike Tomlin. I think he's long overstayed his welcome. I think he's coasting off a Super Bowl from the first Obama administration. So, I would have moved on this season. It just felt like the right time to do it. But the Steelers aren't one of those teams who thinks forward. They care more about perceived stability than progress, contrary to the team on the other side of the state who's won 2 Super Bowls with 2 different head coaches because they aren't afraid to make those decisions. So that's how I feel about the Steelers right now as the lovely Grant Cohn walks by. Say hi to everybody. So again, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Leave a review if you're doing it as a podcast. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Wrapping up here from Indy. Take care. Talk soon.